Alright, we are going to make a simple bowl, like just a cereal bowl. And so in order to do that, we want to get rid of this cube. It's best if we start with a different primitive object. Sphere would be best in this case. So let's press delete on the keyboard, not backspace but delete, and then press delete with your mouse button. And then either Shift A to add a sphere, or come up here to the create menu and sphere, or down here the add menu, however you want to do that. UV sphere. Okay, when we add this sphere, there's a couple things we can do. We can change the number of segments for different reasons, but we're just going to keep it default for now, 32 and 16. We can even change the size of it when we first bring it in, and this goes away after we make any changes to it, but we can change that, and that's useful for different things, but we'll keep it default for now. This sphere now, we're going to make it a bowl out of it, so we're going to cut off the top half, and then the bottom half will look like a bowl already, so let's do that. First thing is I'm going to go into edit mode. It's right down here, or tab on the keyboard takes me into edit mode. And then Z on the keyboard toggles the wireframe mode on and off, Z. And that makes it easier to select all the way through the object. So now I'm going to go over to my keypad on the right side and press 1. It takes me to a front view. And then 5 changes from a perspective view, which it says right here. We're in a perspective view where the front of an object is bigger than what's in the back. That's kind of how we see things naturally. But if I change that with 5 on the keypad, it takes me to an orthographic view, which just kind of makes everything the same size. And it's best to select in orthographic view, because it's in perspective view, we can't see all the lines very well. Orthographic, it's really easy to see all the lines because it's just kind of a flat image. Now I've got everything selected, so I'm going to deselect by pressing A on the keyboard. And I'm also going to come down and select face. Select. And it gives me all the dots for each face. So I'm going to do a border select, B on the keyboard. And I'm going to click and drag down here. Now I've got on the bottom of my border, I've got these dots right here. I want to go just below those dots. If I go above them, it's only going to select what's above. But if I go just below them, it will include those faces in my selection, which is half the sphere. And then I'll press delete, not backspace, but delete. And I'm going to delete faces specifically because that's what I have selected. And then I have half a sphere, and it looks kind of like a bowl. So I'm going to come out of wireframe mode, Z, and tab back to object mode. Press the tab key. And just, I don't know, I like to be above the grid, work above the grid, so I'm just going to pull it above the grid. Just maybe my OCD there, but so I'm going to pull it up a little bit, and then I'm going to tab back into edit mode. And so I have a simple bowl here, but it's not very good. There's no depth to it, so it's not very realistic that way. And also, if I poured some milk into this bowl, it would just tip right over because it's too rounded. So I'm going to take the bottom now and make it flat. So I'm going to press 1 on the keypad on the right again to go to a front view. And I'm still in orthographic view, which is great. Press Z to go to wireframe mode, and B for border select. Now I'm going to select just the bottom few rows of faces, about right there. And when I've got those selected, I'm going to change to the scale tool down here, and then I'm going to click on the blue little box, and it's going to scale it down, and I'm going to go down until I get it flat. And when it's flat, it looks a little more like a bowl now, and now we can set it flat on a surface. Now when I did that, it pulled these couple of rows of faces, it stretched them out a little bit, which kind of gives it a nice effect that it's not perfectly round, but it's your choice how you want to make it look. I'm going to get my translate tool down here back and come up just a little bit. I could come all the way up and then it gets rid of any stretching, but I like a little stretch there, just like that. So it's kind of your choice there. Now, so we've got a better looking bowl here, come out of wireframe mode, and that looks more like a bowl, but it's got no depth still. So the next step is to select all of it, A, until it selects everything, and I'm going to extrude, E. E on the keyboard is extrude, and it only extrudes straight up or straight down, so then I'm going to press S to scale. So E, then S. I'm going to scale out. If I scale in, it's kind of inside out, incorrect, and I can tell because of those dark shadows. So I'm going to scale out, and I don't want it to be too thick, I don't want it to be too thin. That's where proportions come into play, where we want to make it a realistic size of a bowl and thickness. So I'm going to take it about right there, click, and then it's curved on the top a little bit, so I'm going to just grab my blue arrow and bring it down to about flat. A little curved maybe, just your preference. Okay, got a nice bowl there. Press A to deselect everything, and Tab to go out to object mode. And it still doesn't look very realistic because it's got lots of, it's kind of blocky. So we're going to smooth that out, and first do a couple other things before we smooth it. So I want to make a top lip on there, make it poke out just a little bit. So Tab back into edit mode, and I want to select that whole top row, but first I'm going to go to a forward view 1, and then Z for wireframe so I can select it, and then B for border select. And I'm just going to select that top row just below those dots. I've got that whole top row selected. I'm going to go out of wireframe mode, Z. Actually, you know what? I don't need to do that even. Let's deselect that. I'm just going to select this very top part right up here. I can select one of those, but if I hold down Alt on the keyboard and then click one of those, it selects the whole ring, which is really handy. And once I've got that selected, then I'm going to pull that down to about halfway, and then I'm going to hit E to extrude back to where it was, which gives me 2 faces where I previously had 1. So it just gives me a little more to work with. Now I'm going to go into wireframe mode, B for border select, and I'm going to select that top row, which I don't know if that did it too well. Looks like it got it. Yeah, be careful that you make sure you get everything selected that you want before you do anything to it. I'm going to come out of wireframe mode. Okay, I've got that whole top section selected. You know what, I did that wrong again. I don't need that much again. So I'm just going to select the outer edge, and I'm going to press Alt and select that, and it selected a vertical line. So I'm going to deselect that A, hold down Alt, and I'm going to click right in the middle of these lines, and then it will go horizontally all the way around. Okay, now that I've got that one edge selected all the way around, I'm going to either, I've got a couple options here, scale it. I'm just going to scale it from there, and it kind of takes that face right below it with it and just kind of bends it out, which is nice. I could also, if I undo that, I could also extrude and then scale out like that, and then move that up or down. So it kind of just depends on your preference, what you like. I can move that up a little bit like that. And then on the inside I've got that edge loop, so I could change it to edge, select, hold down Alt, and click on that edge, and then I could bring that up so it's kind of curved along with it. I could even bring this inside one, or select this inside one, edge, Alt click, and I could scale that out, kind of make it smooth. It kind of looks like it's smoothed all the way out there. So however you want to do it, just by selecting that outer edge, you could move it up and down or extrude it like I did, and then play with some of those edges on the inside. I kind of like that, how it's curved on the inside, and it's got the little lip on the outside. Let's see what that looks like. However you want to do that edge, there's a few different ways you can do it there, but as long as it has a little lip on the edge. Now I'm going to tab out to object mode, and I still need to smooth this. So I'm going to, and before I do that, there's also the option to shrink this a little bit, scale it a little differently. If I want to kind of squash it, I can just grab the scale tool and squash it down a little bit. If it looked too high or too tall, Just kind of your preference on what you want your bowl to look like. That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to smooth it. This is called a modifier. So over here in my options, I've got these tabs. If you don't see the wrench, just put your mouse over these tabs and use the scroll wheel back and forth, and you can see all your options, all your tabs. We're looking for the wrench, so click on the wrench. This is modifiers, and this is a big part of 3D. Lots of different modifiers, and especially this modifier to smooth. So click on Add Modifier, come down to Subdivision Surface, or sometimes we call it Subsurf, abbreviated that way because we use it so much. I use this on probably 90% of my models. So click that subdivision surface, and it starts to subdivide, and which smooths out your object. And it doesn't really subdivide it unless you apply it, which I hardly ever do. So it's just kind of the appearance of subdividing it. And I usually go to 3 on the view and 3 on the render. So both 3. I usually don't go much higher than that. It might crash the computer if you go any higher than that. So 3 and 3 is great. It's pretty smooth now, but if I zoom in, you can see that it's not completely smooth. So then I complete the smooth by coming over to Tools and clicking the Smooth button. It's kind of a fake smooth. You don't want to do that without the subdivision surface. They work together to make it really nice and smooth. And so now you can see how nice and smooth that is. Very nice. So after you smooth it, what you can even tab in to edit mode, and you could add a loop cut, kind of like we did with the glass cup. Control R on the keyboard. I could add one right here and bring it up to that line right there, and that makes a crease. If I tab back out to object mode, see now there's a crease underneath it. Kind of takes away the smoothness of it. Or I could undo that. I could also do a loop cut on the top up here. Control R. Click that and come up. I could go up all the way to make a hard crease, or I could come up close to the top and click it, and it just brings that edge up a little bit. So lots of different options, however you want to do that and make it look. That looks pretty good. So there's my bowl. In fact, maybe I don't even want that. I'll just go back in and undo that. Kind of like it just smooth like that. And I could even go back in, go to Face Select, hold down Alt, and select that face, and I could scale it more or less, however I want it to look. You can always go back and change it, and that's a great thing about 3Ds. You can always change it. It's never too late. Or I could grab this edge right down here by holding down Alt and selecting that, and I could move that down a little bit. There we go. However you want it to look, as long as there's a lip on it for the grade. That looks good. Now I'm going to put a color on it. I'm going to press 5 and go back to perspective view. There we go. Okay, so come up to the Materials tab, and the last thing is just to put a color on it. Oh, still in Blender Render. I'm going to switch it to Cycles Render, which is what we typically use. And I'm going to click this Use Nodes. I don't know why that comes up, but I'm going to click it. And choose a color. I'm going to give it a nice robin egg blue, which is my wife's favorite color. Why robin egg blue? I don't know, but it is. So to see it in Cycles Render, it doesn't just come up right there automatically. You got to come down here and go to Material View, and then I can see my material on it, see my color. So there's a nice bowl with color. Very nice.